All right, without ado, we're going to get started, and our first guest is a UNT graduate and past president of both the Islamic Association of Louisville Flower Mound, where I live, and the DFW chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations. He's a co-founder and the current executive director of the Muslim Legal Fund of America. Please welcome Khalil Meek.
Assalamu alaikum. Whoa, I like that. Buenas noches. ¿Qué pasa? Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sallam. I greet you with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. I am probably going to be singing to the choir because it looks like everybody here is probably up to speed on things that are happening, but I'm going to shed a little light on particular things that all of you may or may not already know. To start the program tonight, protecting civil rights and restore the Bill of Rights, as the executive director of the Muslim Legal Fund, I have a unique perspective on how things are taking place in America. And a lot of us have seen a lot of new legislation being passed that we're going to talk about tonight. People that have an idea of what the framework is, but I'm actually seeing personal examples of it, and I want to share that with most of you, maybe for the first time. I'll start by saying I love America, I love this country, I love the foundation and principles that it stands for. I love our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of association. I love the transparency that this country was founded on. I like the checks and balances that our government has. I like so many things about this country that I feel obligated to defend and protect them. But what we're going to talk about tonight is the fact that we have these laws, we have these rights, and it seems like this country or some people in this country are trying to take us in a new direction. Some of the founding principles that we all know and love are changing. America is being reshaped. New ideas are being introduced, new laws are being passed, old customs, norms, values are being challenged, and a new culture is being tested. And most of this, at least what I think we'll talk about tonight, is in a reaction to 9/11. After 9/11, our government has decided, or in many ways, that security now is more important than civil rights, civil liberties, and freedom. And this new move for security and challenging the foundation of this country is what brings us here tonight. We've had new laws that are being passed, and the government is wanting secrecy and hiding information and unchecked powers and surveillance and defying due process, and almost every article of the Constitution is under attack. And tonight I'm going to share with you a specific issue that I think you should be aware of if you're not already. And the issue I want to highlight is that I think, how many of you are familiar with the term the Patriot Act that passed after 2001? How many of you read it? I lost most of you there. Inside the Patriot Act, we've all been reacting for the last 10, 11 years about things that we don't like about it. But there's one thing that's particularly devastating to not only our Constitution, but a big minority right now in the United States. And inside the Patriot Act, there was a law that was passed that's referred to as the Material Support Statute. How many of you are familiar with that term, the Material Support Statute? If I ask you what the Material Support Statute is, well, let me tell you first. It says that any U.S. citizen or resident of the United States cannot provide material support to a designated terrorist or terrorist organization. With that definition, shout out, what is material support? Money. What else?
Transportation, providing transportation.
Weapons. The definition goes on to say anything that's monetary, weapons, training, personnel, resources, services, expert advice, assistance, or any contribution that furthers terrorism or legitimizes a terrorist organization's activities. I am for national security. I am for laws that make sense. And if we have a war on terror, we should have a way to prosecute it. I'm not against that. But with that definition, are we now clear on what material support is? I'm going to ask you some questions. If Khalil Meek decides tomorrow that he wants to leave Dallas and fly straight over to Somalia, and I want to do humanitarian aid, that's all I care about, is serving humanity. I have no politics. I don't know anybody in Somalia. Tomorrow I open up a charity. I put a sign up and say, if you're hungry, come eat. Right? I feed 200 people tomorrow. After I feed them, somebody comes up to me and says, Khalil, did you know that 3 people who ate your food are associated with Al-Shabaab? Now, Al-Shabaab is a designated organization. I fed 3 terrorists. Is that material support? Okay. Let's say if I go and I need to get a haircut the next day and I don't speak the language, I go downtown, I see a barber pole spinning. I walk up, I point to my hair. The guy points to the chair. He cuts my hair, he holds up 10 fingers, I hand him $10, I leave. After my haircut, I pick up the newspaper. I see a picture of my barber. I read the article and it says he's associated with Al-Shabaab. I gave him $10. Is that material support?
No. It depends. Those are the good haircut.
I say I'm tired of playing this game. Who's in charge? I want to give this organization, Al-Shabaab, a piece of my mind. They point out somebody. Are you in charge? Yes, I am. I'm Khalil Meek, and I just think what you do causes more harm than good. I think you should find a peaceful solution. All conflict ends in peace. I think the sooner you get there, the better. Here's the advice for the Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Or here's the advice of Jesus, peace be upon him. Or Gandhi. Or Jimmy Carter. Or the best roadmap to peace ever. Please follow this. Assalamu alaikum. I gave advice to a terrorist. Is that material support?
No.
Yes or no?
Yes. No. It's unclear.
All right, so you're getting my point. This law, statute, referred to as the material support statute, is very broad, very vague. We understand the concept, we understand the purpose. But when it comes into applying it as a law, there were so many questions that were asked. All these questions I'm asking you were asked by other charities, large corporations, people who operate in conflict zones, people who have no politics, who have no desire to break the law. But they said, we understand there's this law and we don't want to violate it. So they asked the government, can we do this? Can we do this? What is this? Tell us clearly. The government refused to answer. So they sued the government. There was a lawsuit called the Humanitarian Law Project, led by David Cole, a constitutional scholar at Georgetown University. Went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, after the Humanitarian Law Project, that they're not going to define material support any further. They're going to allow the Department of Justice to use its discretion. And if the Department of Justice thinks what it sees fits the definition of material support, the Department of Justice can indict. They can charge you with the crime. They can take their argument to a jury. And if they can convince a jury can convict. Go get your answer in court. Now, with this process, do any of you think that the Department of Justice could use that interpretation as a political weapon or a persecution instead of just prosecution?
Yes.
I can assure you not only can they've been so creative as to attempt to criminalize humanitarian aid, peacemaking activities, distribution of literature, political advocacy, training in human rights, anything that has to do with guilt by association. And in fact, they are now moving beyond the broad definition of material support into what's referred to as pre-emptive prosecution. That's what I'm here to talk about tonight. Pre-emptive prosecution. Anybody know what pre-emptive prosecution means? Pre-emptive means we're going to go ahead and prosecute you before you commit a crime. How many of you saw the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise a few years back, right? Premise of the movie, fiction, but in the future, these computers are so smart, told law enforcement where a crime would be committed before it happened. Law enforcement rushes to the scene of the would-be crime, arrests the would-be criminal. There's no crime in the future. Perfect law enforcement. How many of you want perfect law enforcement in that fashion? Do you think that there could be a potential for preemptive error Right now, the government has moved into the realm of what's called thought crimes, based on one's beliefs, thoughts, or associations. Ideological crimes, if someone prays too much, or outspoken leader, effective educator, strict fundamentalist. In fact, the government is following a principle that was outlined by Dick Cheney under the Bush administration. After 9/11, Dick Cheney charged the Department of Justice to follow what he called the 1% rule. Anybody know what the 1% rule is? He said, Department of Justice, if you see somebody that has a 1% chance of harming the United States, act as if it's a certainty. So therefore, the Department of Justice has been very aggressive in implementing that philosophy. Right? Agent provocateurs creating cases. I'm going to give you an example of how a preemptive prosecution would work. Let's pretend that I am an expert on bank robbery. I have studied every bank robbery in the U.S. over the last 200 years. I have studied what they look like, what they think, how they dress, how they walk, how they talk, everything about a bank robber. I'm a certified expert. I'm here today to tell you what that profile is. How many of you want to know the profile of a bank robber? Let's say a bank robber is usually male, over the age of 40. Bank robbers like to wear t-shirts, black corduroy pants, tennis shoes. They have a beard, short black hair, green coats, attend civil rights lectures. What's your name? What?
Raymond.
Raymond, based on my expert training, I just want you to know that you look like a bank robber. But that's not a crime. Right? There's no crime. No offense. You look like a bank robber. Now, because you look like a bank robber, that's not a crime. For us to even be concerned about that, there would have to be banks in Dallas. Are there any banks in Dallas? Huh. Have you ever been to a bank in Dallas? Did you know bank robbers sometimes open checking accounts as a pretense to learn more about the bank before they rob it? Do you have a checking account? All right, it's still okay. Because the main thing about bank robbery, we don't need to be concerned yet, is because bank robbers need a getaway car. Some of bank robbers own cars. You don't own a car, do you? No. Do you own a car?
No.
Do you rent a car?
No.
You ever driven a car?
Yes.
You need to know your audience before you ask these questions, don't you? Now we see that, looks like a bank robber, dresses like a bank robber, he's been to a bank, he's opened a checking account, he has a getaway car. It's my professional opinion to recommend that we arrest Raymond before he robs that bank. How many of you agree? Oh my God, Raymond, this is not good. Now we can get a good laugh out of that because it's highlighting absurdity. But take that same position and switch the lingo. I'm a terrorism expert. I know everything about terrorists. I know what they look like, what they dress, what they think, everything. Take this in good sport, man. You look like a terrorist now. You dress like a terrorist. You talk like a terrorist. You've been to a country that has a terrorist. You visited something owned by a terrorist. You now took a trip back to visit your family, but they're terrorists in the country. Now I start to try to persuade a jury that all this conduct that you've been committing, which is lawful, legal, nonviolent, everything is legal, but I start to say that we think you're about to commit a crime, provide material support. In other words, they connect this law into preemptive prosecutions and say, before Raymond gets out of here, we need to convict, or we need to prosecute. And if you think I'm kidding, there was a court case in North Carolina where 7 individuals were prosecuted. They were convicted. The jury read the verdict as follows. We, the jury, find the defendants guilty of a conspiracy to provide material support to an unknown terrorist organization at an unknown time in an unspecified place. Which means you did nothing. And they're going to jail. Now they know now. The point that we're making here is that when we have bad laws, when we have laws that are too vague, when we take a political position of fear and we try to implement that into law, you get all kinds of problems, and especially against our protected civil rights, civil liberties, these freedoms that we all love, that we've died to protect, the things that we're all here tonight because we're concerned about it. And I just can't emphasize enough how much us knowing what's going on and trying to make a difference in our circle of influence, because we're going to talk about the NDAA, the Patriot Act, the Material Support Statute. We've got all kinds of things that people are going to talk about tonight, all with the same problem: trying to legislate fear in a courtroom. Political prosecutions takes liberties from everybody. You know, right now, we've all heard sayings about, you know, they came after the trade unionists, and they came after the socialists, and then they came after the Jews, and, you know, I didn't do anything, I didn't do anything, I didn't do anything. Niemöller said this, and he said, and then they came for me, there was nobody left. Well, today they've got a beautiful target. The Muslim community has been victimized, been vilified. We're the worst thing on the planet. So it makes them easy to project anger and all this new laws at the Muslim community, at a minority. That's somebody that is popular to not like. But I am here to tell you that these problems that are directed at a minority, or political prosecutions, are not going to be limited just to the Muslim community in the long run. And not only are they not going to be limited to the Muslim community, we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. How many of you have heard that expression? And you're singing to the choir. But I'm going to highlight it for some of you who haven't. Canary in a coal mine means coal miners used to dig for coal, or they still dig for coal underground. Sometimes there's a gas release, and you can't smell the gas, you can't taste the gas. The gas is deadly. You breathe too much gas, you die. Coal miners have died from digging coal because of the gas. But coal miners got smart. They decided, you know, we can fix this problem. All we need to do is take a canary, put him in a cage, take him with us down in the coal mine. Now the canary can't smell the gas. The canary can't taste the gas. The gas will kill the bird. But if the canary's running around, jumping and having fun, no gas, keep digging. If you look up and the canary looks sick or dead, you know the gas is there, it's time to get out. It's the warning system. Well, the Muslims are the canary in the coal mine. But the gas will affect everybody. And if the Muslims get pulled over and people don't like it for whatever reason, that gas is not made just for one. It's going to come and affect all of us. So as we say in Arabic, inshallah, God willing, we together can make a difference. And I'll close with this. You know, I can't remember the lady who said that, but all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. As indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So thank you, and let me now introduce our next guest.
Blue.